moving right along. To talk about there's an election going on right now. It's for a bond election. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may have heard of people for it, people against it. Big war being waged on Facebook. Polls are open now for early voting. Let's just get right into it. Let me try. Is this okay for everybody? We have most people over here. Can everybody see this one, or do I go to this one?
This one's probably better.
All right. Let me see if I can slide. Same. Testing. Okay. All right. Bond election. Doesn't want to go, I can see it. Why am I here? To learn some basics about bond elections. This is what we're going to talk about this evening. To study the order of events surrounding this bond proposal. Now, we had one last year for 150 million plus interest and failed. This one is for 130.5 plus interest. To review the arguments in favor of and share concerns surrounding the latest bond proposal. And if there's anybody who wants to chime in at any time. If you have anything you feel like is substantial that is being left out, let's go ahead and talk about it. Who's that? Is that Tom Landry? Who is that? Vince Lombardi? I think we could probably use a coach like that right now. He's famous for the very first thing that he said to his football team. He went in to meet them the first time. He said, "This is a football." He held up a football. So the basis of that is the foundation, right? We're going to start at square one. Forget about everything you ever learned. We're going to start at the basics so we're all on the same page. So in the spirit of Vince Lombardi, what is a bond? A bond is a long-term debt security issued to evidence a loan between a lender and a borrower, specifying the due date for the loan, called the term or maturity, for example, 20 years, the interest rate, 5%, for example, the debt service or the repayment schedule, for example, monthly, semi-annually, or annually, and the revenue source pledged to repay the debt. In other words, a bond election is a ballot measure for voters to decide whether or not they want to allow a taxing entity to borrow money against taxpayer-owned property. In the school district, it would be your home or future sales tax. That would be a city bond. There are state laws governing bond elections, and those are found in the election code. Now, this is the rating scale for a bond. Now, most cities, most school districts are up in the AAA or the AA rating. They get the best rate when they issue a bond. Now, Arlington just passed one. They got 3.10 or 3.11% for a bond. It's a very good rate. And that's, again, reflected by the AAA. The bond that, if this bond passes, the current CISD bond, they are anticipating an interest rate of 4.25. That's conservative. It probably will be closer to the one that Arlington got because it's a similar rating. Proponents of the bond proposal. These are reasons that we need to pass the bond. We need a new high school. The current high school is falling apart, crumbling, crowded hallways between class. We don't have any money. We have to borrow. This is a reasonable argument that the money that they take in property taxes every year, in the case of Cleburne ISD, they take in $48 to $49 million a year from property taxes. Most or all of that money goes to salaries, okay, operating of schools. We need a vocational technical institute because local businesses want trained prospects coming out of high school. It's reasonable for them to ask that. Mansfield has one. If you go over there, Ben Barber, over there on Debbie, coming out of Mansfield. It's very nice. Our school tax rate is one of the lowest in the area, and that is true. I think you could make the case it's one of the lowest in the state. We have a AAA bond rating, as we talked about. Over 65 years old, no tax increase on your home, on your property. And the growth is coming. Okay. So these are some questions that some of us have faced. You're opposed to the bond. Why do you hate the children? And the answer to that is we do not hate the children. I do not hate children. I love kids. We want the kids to be able to go to the nicest university they can. We want the parents to be able to afford to send them to the nicest university they can. And we believe if we continue to harvest the homeowners and the taxpayers more and more money for the primary education, and that's going to put more of a strain on the college education for the kids. Why don't you want Cleburne to grow? Also, why do you hate Cleburne? I don't hate Cleburne, I love Cleburne. I'm a Ben Hogan fan. Has anybody ever heard of Ben Hogan? The only human being to have ever won 5 United States Opens. Has strong ties in Cleburne. Cleburne's a beautiful place. Why don't you want Cleburne to grow? I want Cleburne to grow. We believe it can grow. We believe it is capable of growing. And this is a fun one. They came to our shop and dropped off their propaganda. Do I have Mayor Kane's permission to shoot them if they come back? And I think there's a guy in the front row with a 1911. I feel pretty good right now. Anybody think that's a true statement or not? That is a true statement. That is a Facebook post. Blocked out his face, blocked out his name, so anyway. Now, at this time, I would like to point out that those of us who are involved in this presentation, those of us who have spent time together talking about this bond proposal, trying to defeat the bond, have decided on some things that we agree on. We are not opposed to growth, development of the district, or the issuance of a bond in order to fund these things. Now, that's a key point to make. That's something I really want to clarify this evening, is that some people believe that we don't want anything. We don't want them to be able to borrow any money. We want to shut it down. We want the kids to be in an unsafe building. And nothing could be further from the truth. Rather, the general consensus of those of us involved in this presentation is that the bond in its current form should be rejected in favor of a bond focusing on the high school and the elementary schools, which desperately need repair. Now, I believe they've allocated $82 or $83 million in the current bond for the high school. If they were to run an $83 million bond, that bond would pass. It would pass based on their own data. And they polled before the last bond, you might hear about that later, that they polled Cleburne, and they found that over 50% of the voters in Cleburne would reject any bond over $100 million. And so what did they do? They ran a bond for 150, and it was defeated. If you run the bond for the high school, I believe it would pass. Concerns surrounding the debt increase proposal, otherwise known as the bond. We have a current debt of over $44 million. That's the school district. The school district has a debt of over $44 million. And again, going back to the point I made before, this is not one of the highest in the state, okay? They're not maxed out by any means. But when you have a low debt, to me that's something to be proud of and try to preserve that low debt instead of giving it a reason to be among the other school districts that have higher debt. The proposed bond, $130.5 million. And the interest, and again, this is 4.25% based on the CFO, CISD, 102.9. They've got $15.5 million in cash in the fund balance. Now that is considered by some to be a rainy day fund. If you've got walls falling down on the high school, if you've got leaking ceilings or leaking roofs, I would submit that that is for a rainy day. If it's raining inside the school, it's a rainy day. Okay. If you add all those together, if the bond passes, it's going to give you a total debt of over $250 million. Not too happy about that. To put it another way, Cleburne is home to approximately 30,000 people. You divide that debt over 30,000 people, that's over $9,200 in debt for every man, woman, and child. All right, so at this point, I want to kind of break down the things that have happened leading up to tonight. So obviously, the bond last year failed. They ran another one, but prior to deciding to run the next bond, they conducted the poll. That's a phone call, goes out to a lot of people, and they got it really scientific. These things are very accurate. They can tell you what the voting public will do within a range. After that, Michelle Hughes is hired as a consultant. The bond steering committee is assembled. Months of Delphi technique ensue. Does anybody know what the Delphi technique? Okay, it's very simple. It's a technique that is used to get a group of people thinking in the same direction. If you have any kind of dissent or any kind of discouraging or doubt, this is a way to brush that off to the side and get people moving in the same direction, okay? It's a very effective technique. This is something from the 50s. This is a Cold War thing, okay? That's a very brief version of it. There are books on this, and you can look it up. I encourage you to do so. And you're going to hear more about the way the committee meetings went later. They formed a pact to push the bond. February 16th, the announcement of the bond, okay? And they had the town halls. April 5th, this is where I come in. The JCRP Executive Committee, that's supposed to say the Executive Committee, passes a resolution against the bond. Now the actual bond the language was two parts. One was against the bond, and the other part of the resolution was we called upon the school district to add information to the ballot that would disclose to the voter what the current debt level was, what the interest was going to be on the bond if it were to pass. Similar to when you buy a pack of cigarettes, we have warnings on packs of cigarettes now. They tell you the harm that could happen to you if you engage in this behavior, right? You watch football games, basketball, you see the pharmaceutical commercials that are coming on. You know, it's a great product. Guy's, you know, running through the forest frolicking with his wife. He's 60 years old, feels 20 years old. And warning, it may kill you. So, anyway, we feel like the ballot should inform the voter. And incidentally, the language, a lot of people don't realize this, the language in the resolution is very similar. It is actually patterned after one of Brian Birdwell's bills that didn't see the light of day in the last session. Republican legislature, good bill, didn't get anywhere. I can't imagine why. April 6th, the next day, Mayor Kane issues a statement. April 7th through 8th, Mayor Kane is upset with the resolution. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, it came out on Facebook. I don't think that ever reached the paper. All right, he was upset with the resolution, Tea Party, this and that, stay out, don't mess with Cleveland. Okay, I got it. April 7th or 8th, Pete Wrench contacted Mayor Kane and made him aware of the inaccuracies in his statement. I'm being very charitable, I'm calling them inaccuracies, because I think a lot of times someone will tell you something that's not true, and if you repeat it, that doesn't make you a liar. So what am I talking about? Well, he said that Maggie Wright, who is here, was involved in the 2015 bond election. Congratulations. Do you hate kids? No? Okay.
But I didn't have a party.
Right. And so the other part was that I paid for a robocall. Everybody knows what a robocall is?
Oh, yeah.
I did not. I have a mind to now. You get yelled at for something, you might as well do it and get the I did not organize it, I didn't pay for it, Pete Wrench did. So Pete called the mayor and said, hey, you got it all wrong. I was the one who paid for it. So, you know, that would be the moment when a person could say, I stand corrected, I withdraw what I said. Who's that? That is... I admit I didn't get the best picture of it, but I like that picture, actually. I think it reflects a lot. But who that is easily the most anti-conservative food critic at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And that is Bud Kennedy. On April 8th or 9th, it's Thursday or Friday, Bud Kennedy interviews Mayor Kane about the resolution and his reaction, the mayor's reaction. And there's the article. Okay? Tea Party to Bud out. Tea Party, I don't know what the Tea Party had to do with anything on this thing. So, this is the first meeting we've had since the resolution. So, in the article, a few things were said. Rural Tea Party activists from between Burleson and Mansfield, 21 miles away, I pushed a handful of outlying county Republican chairs to pass a resolution opposing the bond for new high school. Well, it's for a high school and it's for a lot of other things. The opposition is part of a statewide campaign against local debt. That is false. It's spurred mostly by liberty movement activists led by Tim Dunn of Midland, an oil man and co-founder of a Christian private school. I don't know if that's supposed to be an insult, that he was the founder of a Christian private school or not. You might have to call Bud Kennedy, but I've never met Tim Dunn. I wouldn't recognize him if I saw him on the street. I've received not one penny from from him or anybody else to fight taxes from going up in Cleveland. We don't need people from Midland, Austin, or Burleson. Okay. Organizers from as far away as Wichita Falls with no stake whatsoever came. The reason I show this article to you is to point out, I'm going to go back, okay? So look at the chronology here. April 6th, he issues his statement with the inaccuracies in it, and then he's called the next day or the day after. Was it the next day? Pete? Next day? Okay. Called him, and then the very next thing that happened was this newspaper article, and that would have been a perfect opportunity to correct that, but it just kind of changed a little bit. Well, these things generally were done by these general people, and they're connected to these people in Midland and things like that. All right, yeah, so he's upset. The paper version says, if you read that I'm upset, I am. If someone calls you that you don't know, ask them where they're from. Well, this was the earlier Facebook post. Someone calls you that you don't know, ask them where they're from. If they're not from here, then tell Mr. Palmer and his friends to worry about his own school district and tell him don't mess with Cleveland. I'm telling you right now, I pay property taxes in Cleveland. I'm a member of the Johnson County Republican Party. We have property at 210 South Main, and if I'm not the one that pays part of that property taxes, I'd like somebody to tell me who does. We pay about $2,200 a year in property taxes, and if this bond passes, I will pay more property taxes. That's why I'm speaking on the bond. Okay, now this is an email. That's an open records request. And if you see those red figures, I'm going to blow it up for you. This is from the school district. And this is going to tell you how much money was spent on, give me just 1 second, I want to make sure I'm in the right place. Okay, yeah. So this is the money that was spent during the PAC, okay? $24,800, remember that number for the consultant. Corgan is an architecture firm. They were paid $72,237. It was not for a blueprint or plans of any kind, for we don't have any. All right, I'm not going to worry about that other stuff. Food, yeah.
So that's the 26 main bond committee, the 9 meetings that we had. Those are the expenses
Okay.
that the school incurred over time, putting on that bond committee, all of the 59 people in the community that showed up, the 9 meetings. This was an open record for Harold Jenkins, Harold Gendry, because we didn't know what it would cost to advertise, not advertise, the cost of all these meetings.
And you were on the bond steering committee. This is Harry Shaffer, who's going to speak later.
David was, and they fed us, you know, everybody had a box lunch waiting when you got there.
Sure was boxed lunch?
Yeah, the meals, look at that meal.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to focus on the $72,000 in the Corgan architecture firm. All right, now let's look at, sure. The school district pays for the meetings that are involved with the steering committee. That's correct. That is an email from the school district.
Whose money is that? Is the school district's money?
Well, it's, yeah, sure. All right, now, $72,000, remember that? To Corgan. Corgan then pays $5,000 to the PAC that is pushing the bond. And out of that $5,000, the PAC that is pushing the bond pays for the t-shirts, the mailers, the signs that you see right outside, the advertising, the phone calls. Has anybody gotten anything in the mail? Okay, I'm gonna tell you something. I've been involved in political races, campaigns. There's some nice materials, some money's pushing this thing. They really want to get it to go through. So that's where the money comes from that's paying for all those things. Just thought you'd like to know. And this is how you win a bond election. Just take a look at that. That's where the win comes from. And so the architecture firm, they give the $5,000 just not out of a total charity, do they? They're giving the $5,000 because they're wanting something on the back end. They want to get the contract for designing the school building. Does anybody know what that picture is of? Somebody does.
Carolyn, the building that fell down because it wasn't constructed.
Well, that's in Red Oak. That is in Red Oak. And did it happen in Garland as well?
I'm in the wrong location.
Okay.
It wasn't constructed property also.
Yeah, I believe it's called Glen Heights, but that is a school in Red Oak, and it was designed by Corgan. Now, you know, the architect is not the one who built the school, but according to the Dallas Morning News, the construction firm that built the school was adamant that they followed the plans exactly as they were designed. And Corgan, the architecture firm, according to the Dallas Morning News, would not return any phone calls, or I believe it was repeated phone calls. And the wall just fell over. It was not hit by a tornado, it was hit by high wind. Okay, so yeah, $24,000 for the consultant. This was obtained through an open records request. I blocked out the names, those aren't important. These are admin, this is administration. Now, in the column on the left, that is salary previous to a raise. The center column is the raise, and on the right is the new salary. Now, I like how it's all rounded off. It's just no reason other than just round it off and make it easy on everybody. But anyway, so if anybody wonders where money could come from other than a bond, I would submit to you that some of those raises are a little bit high. I think there's a guy in there went from makes $79,000 a year, he got a $15,000 raise, $66,000, $68,000, $13,000 raise. A lot of money there. You could fix a lot of leaky ceilings with that. Okay, at this time I'd like to turn it over to either David, Shelton, or Harry, who are on the bond steering committee. David, thank you.
Before I say that, I just want to add on to what Joe said. I don't usually speak about the money part, but there's a couple of really good websites out there. Texas Transparency is one. FAST is one, which is something like the financial allocation for the state of Texas. Hello? Okay, now am I?
That's better.
Okay, how's that? Okay, how's that? Is that better? Okay. I don't usually talk too much about the money part, but this little brochure talks about things that people are supposed to do about a bond. This is put out by the state of Texas, the comptroller, that you are make your voice heard in school buildings, local voter authorized bonds funded by property taxes pay for most construction projects. As a taxpayer, you have a right to be informed and know what your school district is spending property tax supported school construction projects. It says have specific projects been identified. And it says to check the ballot language on the bond. And this is stuff put out by the Texas Comptroller. This is not some bizarre website. And to add on to the cost during the, just for your information, during the period from 02 and 03 to 12 and 13, the TEA debt show debit service spending rose by 103%, while enrollment grew only by 19%. So we're spending a lot of money to try and educate some people. Okay, my name's David Shelton, and I have been living in Cleveland for 20 years. I have 2 children that graduated from Cleveland High School. I taught high school in Venus for 10 years. My wife even taught at UTA for 7 years. So we know a little bit about the education system. We are not against, as Joe said, we are not against the school bond. We are against this school bond. But we are for a school bond. Now this particular story, the school bond story, has a lot of angles. There's a lot of different ways you can attack this. You can attack it with money, with stories, whatever. It has so many that it's really difficult. I'm going to try to mention some things, hopefully, that Joe did. First, I want to just throw this in. I have a mailer that, because this bugs me, I had a mailer got today. I don't know how many people, or yesterday. I don't know how many people got it. This is a mailer. You got it, right? This mailer says passage of the Cleveland ISD bond election. The next line is fairly small. Won't cost voters age 65 and older a single penny. And below that, in much smaller print, especially if you're 65, you need some glasses. It says, over their frozen amount, in very small print. Well, obviously, if you own other property and you're over 65, it's going to affect you. Obviously, if you go to any store whose property taxes are raised, you're going to spend more money there and it's going to affect you. So let's say this is a half-truth at best. But what really annoys me tremendously about this particular way they put it, and they did the same thing on the $150 million bond, is what they are telling people 65 years and older. They're saying, do not care what the person who lives down the street and is 25 and has 3 kids is doing, and do not care what the person who's 60 years old. Don't worry about them having to pay stuff. Just think about yourself. Stick it to the young people. Don't worry about the young people. We don't care about them. As a friend of mine said, we'll just sit back in our rocker and go, you know, just let it happen, baby, because it doesn't affect us. I think that's a really bad way to present something to somebody. And actually, it insults me quite a bit, because I am over 65, and it bugs me that they do that. And I could actually probably talk 50 minutes on this little brochure right here, but we must continue on. There are, I also should mention the high school. I mean, the half-truths they do, hopefully everybody realizes this little red high school that they put on this thing all the time, they don't have a clue what the new high school is going to look like. Normally it says artist rendering, it doesn't say on this. This is just a picture of the high school that some artist dreamed up to make you think, hey, we're going to have a cool high school that looks like this. And you may notice it looks a little bit like our old high school looked. So they're like, you know, trying to make us think, hey, they don't know what, they haven't even hired an architect yet. They don't know what it's going to look like. Well, anyway, there's 3 reasons that I'm opposed to the bond. One is a money reason. One is the fact that I was on the committee, and I'll tell you about that. And one is their lack of interest in compromising with anybody. The first reason I'm against the bond is a 19% tax hike. The school property tax rate will go up 19%. That right there, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not voting for the bond. That is a phenomenal raise by any taxing entity, any government entity, 19%. There's an interesting, to me, kind of funny thing about that. The meeting the other night at the Lyceum, the meeting that ended in chaos, as they said. There was a, I don't know if anybody was there, but there was a methodology to, Joe was there. There was a methodology to add to the question and answer period. Well, you had to have a sheet of paper, you had to write your name and address on the sheet of paper, and you could only ask one question. And a lot of my concern about this is the way they handle the presentation of this bond. Well, the superintendent was asked a question. It was, what? And we don't know exactly what it was asked, because the woman's reading, you gave your paper to his secretary or whatever, and she was reading it to him. But the question was asked, what's the current, I don't know if it's current, what's the tax rate now? How is our tax rate compared to other tax rates? And he said, well, Mr. Johnson was the CFO, you answered that question. So he said, we are the second lowest, we have the second lowest rate in Johnson County. And that's true, we do. Second lowest rate in Johnson County, and that's a good thing. I mean, I don't want to stay the second lowest, but that's good. They have managed their money well. We have the second lowest rate in Johnson County. Okay, next question. Well, no, next question. So we went on to the next question. Does anybody think there might be a follow-up to that particular question? Which might be, what's the tax rate going to be if the bond passes? That might be the follow-up to that. Well, our superintendent doesn't really want to answer that, but our tax rate will then be, if it passes, we will be in the top 10% of the people, of the schools in the state. Our tax rate will then be one of the highest in the state. We're going to go from the lowest to one of the highest. We're going to go up to $1.62 per $100, and the top rate is $1.67. So we're only 4 cents away from the top rate. But he didn't want to answer that, and he didn't answer it. And it goes on and on. And another interesting point about our superintendent, sorry to say that, is one of the questions that was proposed to him by a lady in the crowd was, what's the rate of poverty, or how many kids are on free lunch, yada, yada, at the school district? He said 66%. Next question. Well, there was a two-parter to this. They didn't want to read the two-parter. And the two-parter was, how does this tax hike affect the poor people? And at that point, let's say that the assembly broke down a bit, and chaos erupted. But let me say that I asked him the same question at an earlier meeting at Irving, where there was very few people, and nobody asked a question. And I was just sitting there. I was there with a friend. We were just sitting there, so I said, and I said the same question actually. How will a 19% tax rate affect those people who rent houses? What will that do to their rent? Does anybody know what that might do to their rent? I think everybody knows. Well, the superintendent did not know. The superintendent said, I'd have to consult an expert. To me, that's just disingenuous, folks. Just tell the truth. Say, hey, it may go up on somebody, but we believe in the high school. We want to have education. Tell the truth. The man is a politician. And one more thing. I'll just do on finance because I'm not the big finance guy. This is a Granbury High School is doing a bond right now. Granbury High School is broken ground. They've broken ground and they're working on their high school. And I don't know if this is the best time to introduce this, but I will say this. These are the main things that they told us were the problems at our high school. Well, Granbury is going to build a new, it says they're going to create a complete high school campus for grades 9 to 12 by building a 9th grade classroom addition. So I'm assuming by this, the 9th grade was part of a junior high. They're moving into the high school, so they're building a whole 9th grade addition. They're also going to construct new classrooms, career and technical focused vocational programs such as health science, culinary arts, yada, yada. That is what we are also doing. We're also improving our CTE. So they're doing that. They're also going to renovate and expand their fine arts spaces. That is what they want us to do. They are also reconfiguring internal classroom layout for educational. That's what we're doing. They're also going to have extensive renovations to transform the building's interior and exterior. Whether we want to do that or not, I don't know. The truth is they are fixing the things that the school district, the high school principal told us was the main problems at the high school. The price of the Granbury bond is $62,295,000 in 2013. So let's say it's 70 million now, or million. So let's say 70 million now. Well, 70 million is a whole lot different than 130 million. So that's just kind of curious. Just might want to think about things like that. Okay, I was on this committee, the steering committee. I stayed there to the bitter end. And I stayed to the bitter end only so I could speak with some amount of authority about it. There were many people that did not stay to the bitter end, and many people that missed meetings. I actually went there thinking there would be a compromise. I thought there would be a compromise because they had been defeated on the $150 million bond. So I assumed that people would want to compromise. We want to compromise, we want to get a bond the town agrees on, we want to pass the bond, we want to get the dirt flying, we want to help the schools. That's what I assumed. I was told by some people I was crazy that they were not going to do that. But I truly did believe there was going to be compromise. I really believed that. I thought they would have to come to the table. Well, I went in. They had, first the people they invited, they had a committee for the $150 million bond was composed of 27 people. 24 people voted for the $150 million bond, 2 opposed it, and 1 abstained. I believe that's correct. Well, they invited all these same people back to the new committee. So we got 24 people, at least, coming from the old committee back to the new committee. You know, you don't want to prejudge anybody, but you might think there's a possibility they're going to vote for this next bond also. You might just think that, you don't know. I know one of the people who opposed the $150 million bond and was on that committee he was also invited, because everybody was on the committee was invited. And I know he walked in and looked at who was there and started to sign in and said, nah, I can't do it again. And he turned around and left because he couldn't solve the same votes. So I go there and I go to sit down. They already divided everybody up into tables of 8. Tables of 8. So I go to sit down. I'm looking, and I'm sitting next to a former school board member on one side. On the other side, I'm sitting next to a retired Claiborne High School teacher. Over here is the man that led the was, I believe at that time, the secretary of the PAC supported the $150 million bill. I think he's now vice president of the PAC that supports $130 million money. I also have a facilitator at this table who's a high school principal. I'm going, this ain't looking too good for me. It's not going to be easy. And to be honest, there was also a city council member on my table, and there was a businessman who sort of quit coming after a while, and then there was a young man who worked at the industrial complex, and that's who was at my table.
What was the significance of the table? You say the table.
Well, you're right. I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get there. The significance of the table. So, anyway, let's just say that it was looking a little strange. It was looking like I saw very few people there that represented the majority of the voters, because the majority of the voters had just voted against the bond. But I saw very few representatives of those folks in that committee. Well, the first thing we decided to do is we're going to go view a high school. We're going to go look at a high school other than Cleveland. Well, we didn't go to Joshua, or we didn't go to Burleson High. We went instead to Centennial High School. I don't know what anybody knows about Centennial High School. I got a little card here. Centennial High School, the most expensive high school built in the state of Texas when it was built. The most expensive high school built in the state of Texas. So, I got a little card here somewhere. So that's a little fishy, and I kind of went there. I mean, I think I knew this information before we went. And I'll only tell you one thing about Centennial High School that's important. I need my card. I don't have it. Centennial High School, I'll give you an idea. Centennial High School is kind of like a palace. Centennial High School, this just represents the whole thing. Centennial High School has, in their high school, a facsimile, a reproduction of a courtroom. Let's say 30 by 40 foot room, 40 by 40. It is a courtroom, folks. It's got a bench for the judge to sit up here. It's got the little gate things. It's got lawyers on each side, and it's got a balcony where you can sit. And this is for the debate team, I believe. That's all it's for. It is a facsimile of a courtroom. Now that doesn't even start talking about their culinary. They must have 7 or 8 commercial gas. I mean, it's really a strange place. Truly worth a visit.
4 practice football field, one of which is indoors and air conditioned.
Right. Oh, and here I did find my little deal. And one thing I was kind of amused about that was, of course, Joshua was right down the street. We could have gone there. Could have gone to Burleson. We go to Centennial. So I'm thinking, because I had looked up what things kind of cost, our superintendent came from Mansfield. Mansfield built Lake Ridge and Legacy High Schools, I believe, while he was there. Mansfield and Lake Ridge High Schools were built very economically. Now, the truth is, we live in Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't have the biggest tax base in town. We want to be interested in functional economic high schools. Hey, that's what we need. We don't really need all the glitz. Just to give you an idea, the total for Lake Ridge High School, these are both in the same similar population, they're both 5A schools. Lake Ridge High School was built for $46,045,700. Centennial High School was built for $108,974,424. So it costs more than twice as much. So why didn't we go to Lake Ridge or to Legacy, which is similar also? They were both built. The construction for Lake Ridge was $109 a square foot. It was $198 a square foot at Centennial. I mean, the differences are astounding. So if I want to go look at a school, I want to go look at one that's going to help us make decisions on how to build an economical high school. That's the point. So things are starting to still look a little funky now because we're going to these strange places. So now let's go tour Cleveland High School. Now we're going to go tour Cleveland High School. You can imagine, after Centennial, well, Cleveland High School, I have to admit, doesn't look all that good, folks, after you've been to Centennial. So we're walking through there, and the principal's taking us around. And the principal says, we got some problems, okay? One of our problems is the traffic flow in the middle there. It's very crowded going up the stairs. There's some very narrow halls, and that's all true. That's all true. So I'm going, okay, we can fix that. I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that. Okay, let's go look at the CTE. Go look at the connect. I'm on board. I'm actually on board with that. I mean, it needs to be bigger. It needs to be modernized. I'm on board with that. Okay, let's do that. We need a new basketball gym. Okay. Look, we only have 2. Most schools our size have 3, and it needs you know, they talk about ours being old and blah blah. Maybe they are, but nevertheless, okay, I'm on board with that. And he also said we need a little bit with the fine arts. Okay, so I'm actually on board with this guy. I said, okay, well this will work. Let's go back and talk about it. And I say that just to say I wasn't in there going, let's don't do this, let's don't do anything. I'm actually for all these things. Well, that didn't really have anything to do with what they wanted to do, obviously. Their idea of how to fix the traffic flow is to build a new high school. That's how they're going to fix the traffic flow. Well, that'll work. They don't want 2 gyms. They don't want 1 gym. They want 2 gyms. You don't hear much about the sports part of this, do you? They want 2 gyms. They're going to put artificial turf on the fields. They're going to redo the baseball field and the softball field and build new stands. You don't see that in the flyer. You don't see sports mentioned in the flyer. We're talking millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. And it was presented in a very interesting way. I know Joe mentioned the Delphi technique. And I was in there and people were talking and saying, somebody said, yeah, they're doing the Delphi technique. And I'm like, you know, that sounds like some weird something to me. I never heard of that. So I go look it up on the web. I look it up and it says, the Delphi technique, it says, hire a facilitator. I said, well, they hired a facilitator from out of town, 24,000, okay. It says, get tables, put people at tables of 7 to 8 people. They did that. 7, I'm like, what the heck? This is kind of looking like real stuff here. It said, get a facilitator on your side to sit at each table. Well, they put a high school principal at each table. Son of a gun. I'm like, you know, this is a real deal. This is not some dream. And you know, the point of the Delphi technique is to get people to reach a predetermined conclusion. They put out that committee formed that bond. That committee did not form any bond. They put out a list of what they wanted. Now, you could vote against it. I mean, I can go on. You could vote against it. You could say, oh, I don't want a high school. But you couldn't say, I want to remodel this one. I don't want to, you know, you had it. You could vote for it or not vote for it. That was it. And if you start thinking about all the weird things they did, if you want stuff, pretty much, you most had to go along with what they were proposing. People say, well, how do you know that? How do you know they wouldn't take options? Sure, they would consider people's options. Well, the facilitator, 2 people walked straight out of the committee meeting and never came back, who were trying to get, one was actually a school superintendent, former school superintendent, and they were trying to get people to consider giving Cook and Coleman more money and less money to CTE. They were making a proposition. They were trying to, at their table, say, why don't we do this? And the facilitator proceeded to tell them, you cannot talk about that. That's not an option. So they left. They got up and left because they realized there's no reason to be here. The truth is, on the first meeting, the superintendent should have come out and said, I'm a superintendent. I know what I'm doing. I'm an educator. And I've been working with this architect. And I believe for these children, we need a $130 million bond. And we have studied it, and we want to know how many of you are for it. And you would have got pretty much the same results at the end. They would have asked for it. You would have got the same results as was at the end. And she also would say things like, if you, for example, if you brought up artificial turf, or if you brought up minimal things, I could talk about some funny things. She would say, no, look at this like you're at 30,000 feet. You're supposed to look at this bond like you're at 30,000 feet. The big picture. Don't worry about, 5 million here, 10 million here, 15 million here. Look at the big picture. You're not supposed to look at those little things. And that's the truth. That's exactly the way the committee was run. Because I was there, folks. So, well, I don't talk about that too long. The 2 gyms, they wanted 2 gyms instead of 1. I'll tell one funny story about the fine arts foyer. I thought this was funny. And of course, there's actually people in that building. I don't know how serious they were. I'm not going to say that this is really the reason they want a new high school because it's so insane that I can't believe it's true. But there's people sitting there in that committee that would say, we don't like the way the high school faces. We need a high school that fronts on Nolan River Road. And therefore, we need to build we need to pass a $130 million bond to build a new high school because ours is facing the wrong way. I mean, I'm dead serious. And one even better than that was that foyer. They want to do some stuff on the fine arts building. So they showed these fancy pictures, said we're going to well, they got a good word for this stuff, but it's on here. Upgrade. When they say upgrade, I mean, who knows what that means, folks? What are they gonna do? They're gonna upgrade the foyer to the fine arts center. You know, I don't know how many people have been there. There's nothing wrong with the foyer to the fine arts center. It's plenty big, it's warm in the winter, cold in the summer. I mean, it's perfect. Nothing wrong with it. The only reason I really heard anybody say, and I hate to say this is the only reason we can do it, because we're talking a couple of $1 million. They said, we don't like the lights. The light fixtures are outdated. If you've ever been in it, it's got these big 12 lights down there, and they come down from a rod, and that's kind of 70s and 80s. They said, we need to update this thing because it's out of style. We need to take the taxpayers' money and go update this because what the heck? It's harming our education. People really said that. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So let's talk, I want to talk about what was the most talked about subject, the most controversial subject that was talked about at the committee. Well, Cook and Coleman, if you ever notice, Cook and Coleman's always mentioned on this here. We've got the top 5 things. Take care of Cook and Coleman Elementaries, right? Cook and Coleman were given, on the $150 million bond, Cook and Coleman were getting $27 million. Okay? $27 million to fix them up on the $150 million bond that's failed. What are Cook and Coleman getting now? Anybody know? $2.5 million. So we don't know what happened exactly, to pump them up, but now they're only getting $2.5 million. And let me tell you, the only reason they're even on this bond, the administration proposed $2.5 million for Cook and Coleman to fix, all I ever remember was to fix it. Put a chain link fence basically in the back for security parts, change some locks, and install the dividers on what they should do. So, and he said, we'll take it out of M&O money. This money's not going to be in the bond. We're going to take $2.5 million out of M&O and fix Cook and Coleman. Okay. Until somebody said, wait a minute. If we don't put Cook and Coleman in the bond, those Cook and Coleman people aren't going to show up and vote. We better put them in the bond.
That was said in the meeting.
Oh, absolutely. That was the only reason that was changed. People around said, we got to get them involved. We got to get Cook and Coleman people to vote. If we don't put them in the bond, they might not vote. That's the only reason that $2.5 million is on this bond. The administration proposed that it be taken out of M&O. This wasn't the administration's idea. This was one thing the committee changed. The committee did change it. Yep. So, that's just kind of a funny way they do things. So, anyhow, and that's the second reason I'm against the bond. First is financial, and the committee, and then the compromise. And the thing that really bothered me, I think, more than anything else, is that nobody was willing to compromise. We had just had an election. The $150 million bond had been voted down by a majority of the people, and they come back with a $130 million bond. And that really annoyed me. Because I went in there thinking, surely they'll compromise, they just lost the election. Why don't they call up the 2 guys who were on the other committee and told them they weren't going to be able to pass this bond and say, listen, you come up here and talk to us, bring somebody you want, we'll get 3 guys, and you get 3 guys, and sit across the table and see if we can come up with a bond that we can agree upon. I mean, maybe we can't, but let's have some serious discussion, see if we can come up with a bond we can agree upon so that there won't be all this fighting in the city. Let's come up with a $70 million bond. Nobody's going to complain about that. $70 million bond, that'll fix all the problems the high school principal said he had. That will fix all the problems the high school principal said he had. It won't put a sports complex in, it won't build a high school, it won't, do whatever, but it will fix all the problems the high school principal said he had. So, you would think that's what they would do, or I thought that's what they would do, and I was mistaken. They did not do that. There was no attempt, in my opinion, for compromise. Now, they did come down $20 million, and they took the football field off of it, and I believe they think that a lot of people only voted for it for the football field, and they may be right. And most people I talked to voted against the bond because it was too large and not transparent. And that's a whole other story if you want to talk about why they don't have somebody looking over the bond, why they don't have a committee to oversee the bond. That's a whole other topic. So anyway, that's 3 reasons that I'm opposed to it. And I think the people who were in the bond, in the committee, who do not care about the 19% tax rate. There's people that couldn't care less. They're taxed more than 19%. People who don't care that the committee was manipulated and very strange. There's people who don't care about that. People don't care that they didn't compromise. People don't care about that. Those people should vote for the bond. Because why not? But those people are not going to pass the bond. The people that are going to pass the bond are the people that say, this bond's not very good, it's a little high, and maybe the committee was funky, and maybe they didn't compromise, but we have to do something. Those are the people that are going to pass the bond. And all you're doing when you do that is enabling the power people to keep on doing what they're doing. Until you say no, 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 until you do that, they're going to keep on doing it. So that's a very poor reason to vote for the bond, and I know that attitude's out there. And I hope that it doesn't win over. I hope we win. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that I live in Burleson, I'm in Mansfield ISD, and Dr. Heath was the superintendent there when they constructed Rendon Tarbor, or Tarbor Rendon School, right there on about 1 click east of me. And I'll tell you that they gave that guy $75,000 an acre for that property. And the first thing they did after they bought it was they took down his wrought iron fence that was all along the frontage road, many, many acres, frontage road. They took down the wrought iron fence, they constructed the school, but they put up a chain link fence during the construction. And then when the school was finished, they took the chain link fence down and put the wrought iron fence back. Now, if you want to have a conversation about efficiency, it blows my mind. Harry, did you have anything to add about the community experience? You got some information? Harry used to work for IBM. He's very analytical.
Could I have my 5 minutes?
You can have your 5 minutes from that. Harry's 5 minutes are, what is that?
Oh, yeah. I think everybody needs a history lesson.
Okay, yes, sir.
A little history lesson.
Can I ask a question before you get started?
Sure.
I may be the only person in here. Where are they going to build this building at?
Well,
I don't know. I've not heard. I just heard they want a bunch of money. But where are they going to put the school building? Where are they going to build it?
between the current building and Nolan River. It's on the current high school campus.
We're only going to have one high school, not two?
We have a current high school.
Yeah.
They propose to build another building beside that building.
You're going to hear you. Mr. Palmer, you had a site map. If you want to
Beside
show
it.
everybody.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Harry, talk in the mic. Hold it.
Okay.
If you're familiar with going to Cleburne ISD website, go down on their homepage, down about the middle, it says 2016 bond. And I would encourage everybody to just take a few minutes to go through it and look at all their pictures. It will help you understand what they propose. But I want to give you all a history lesson a minute for just a second to help everybody understand the two reasons that I don't support the bond. One is I don't trust them to spend the money appropriately. Okay. And the other one is obviously the tax increase. Okay. Now, in 2013, Cleburne passed a $10 million bond. I'm in the audience, I'm at the board meeting, I'm talking to Boyd, sitting beside me. He works for First Southwest, the company that the school uses for all their bond transactions. And we're I'm listening, they're talking about the school coming up with a $10 million bond. And I looked over at Boyd and I said, what kind of interest rate are we talking? And Boyd says, 1%. And I said, well, how can a school borrow money at 1%? He said, oh, it's real simple. All the schools in Texas are able to get low rates because the permanent school fund down in Austin collateralizes all their loans. Which means if I'm borrowing money on a tractor for the farm, I gotta put a tractor up. But the school folks get to tag on to the school, permanent school finance fund down in Austin. Okay, in 2013, school passed a $10 million bond, gave a long list of what they were going to use the money for. No dollar amount, just a list of what they wanted to spend the money on. 2014, the school passed a TRE, which is a process whereby the school increased the tax rate on the M&O side. Everybody knows on your tax bill you have an M&O tax rate and you have an INS tax rate. Cleburne's M&O tax rate was $1.04. They raised it 13 cents to $1.17. It increased the revenue for the school $3.7 million on the M&O side. 2014, they got an extra $3.7 million because of a tax increase. 2015, they got $3.7 million more in their budget because they raised property tax. So now we're at $1.17. That's a cap. They can't raise any more on the M&O sides. $1.17 is a cap. That's where they're at. Yeah, Jim.
In case somebody doesn't know what M&O is, would you tell us?
Okay, M&O is maintenance and operation. The purpose of this money is to pay salaries, the light bill, the gas bill, fuel bill for the buses, all of the money that needs to go to operate the school district, okay? Well, so what Cleveland's done now, y'all, is they've maxed out their M&O tax rate. They can't raise it anymore, so they can't get any more money by that method, okay? Now that we're over here, 2014, raised our taxes. They got 3.7 million more, and I kept wondering what they're doing with the money. Okay, in 2015, I kept wondering, what are they doing with the money? Well, because Cleburne has two problems, two challenges amongst many. One is Cleburne academically is in the bottom 10% of the state, okay? I think that's travesty. So academically, they're the bottom 10% of the state, okay? The other problem is, and this is an opinion, I don't feel like that the school board has done a very good job of maintaining our buildings, okay? I will say this, every person on the school board in Cleburne is a good person. They mean well, they spend a lot of time, and I'm very appreciative for the time they spend on the school board. But as a group, they need to get focused on the challenges of the school district. Now then, Joe showed you that the school has a pretty good, healthy fund balance. Well, since we're the bottom 10% academically in the state, we hadn't been maintaining our buildings, that allows us to build a fund balance. But I'm wondering, where's this 3.7 million going every year? Joe showed y'all a sheet of the increased salaries that the folks that work in central office got this year. Okay, when school started, I went and got a copy of the budget. I went through it, had a meeting with David Johnson. He's the Chief Financial Officer for the school district. I had some questions for David. Nice guy, sharp, I'm glad we have him. He's a good guy. But I asked him, David, how can we justify 2 athletic directors? Actually, 2.5. Head football coach slash athletic director, assistant athletic director. Then we've got Pam Lee, who just filed $1 million lawsuit against the school. Who knows where that's going? And then Mark Walker. When you look at the salaries of these three people, they're over $300,000. Okay, I want to give y'all a reminder. Business 101, you only have two choices when you're running a business. You either increase revenue or you lower expenses. If somebody else has a better solution, catch me after the meeting. Please share with me a better answer, okay? That's only two choices we have. The school district's no different. They have the revenue side, they have the expense side, and I think it's sad the school board is not providing oversight for the financial operation of our school district. The reason I say that, if you get time, go look at the agenda for every school board meeting. We have awards. When we get through with the awards, all the kids jump up and leave and all the parents. Now we have a board meeting. When they get down to the financial, like the check register, the expenses and all that, these are consent items. They don't discuss them. They just say, okay, that's it. Everybody raises their hand, they agree to it, move on. I personally am on the board of Johnson County Special Utility District, our water system here in the county. I'm a director. I've been on the board for 16 years. The first thing I want to see is the financial statement every month. I want to look at our revenue. I want to look at our expenses. We have a workshop. The school doesn't operate that way. And they're one of the biggest employers in the county. Okay, when school started, got a copy of the budget, looked it over, had a meeting with David, asked him about the coaches, or athletic directors. He answered me. And I said, okay, here's what else is a puzzle to me. I said 2 years ago, 81% of the budget was spent on salaries. This budget, we now have 83%. Let me tell y'all the shock when I went to the CISD website under the bond package. Salaries, percentage of salaries of the budget is now up to 85%. It's not sustainable, okay? I did an open records last year. I wanted to know how many people work in central office, from the superintendent to the janitor. 47 people. Year later, central office, they're north of 52, and I don't know how many they got in there now. The point is, the only reason you add staff in a school is when your enrollment increases. That's the only justification. Well, this year, the enrollment increased, they tell us, 150, 60 kids. Okay, but the good news, when David and I were in the bond steering committee this winter, they did present a lot of information, they really did. And I took a lot of time and looked at all of it. One of the reports that they gave us was a demographic study that shows the projected 10-year growth of the school the next 10 years. The numbers they gave us, the projected growth for Cleburne School the next 10 years it's almost flatline. I mean, the next 4 years is like zero. And the next 10 years, you go down the list, and I've got it, I can show y'all, it's like 1.2. I mean, very small tax increase. And, very small enrollment increase. Okay, let's think about this a minute. The average household income in Cleburne, Texas is around $35,000, okay? Our enrollment is stagnant. Heath said in an article last week in the paper that this bond is not about the enrollment increasing, it's about our facilities. Okay, I've never talked to anybody in business that's out here gonna borrow a lot of money and build a lot of new buildings unless his business is generating more revenue. Okay, if we have enrollment, we can generate more revenue, more kids. In defense of Corrigan, the architect firm that did the presentation, Steve was their salesman. In defense of him, they came up with the projections that did mention that next year Kaufman Charter School is going to open, and they're projected to take the first year 150 kids, which means they could come from CISD. So Cleveland ISD could lose 150 kiddos that are going over here to the charter school, okay? So, you know, that's to be determined, we'll see. And the revenue per kid is to the school district, it varies from school district to school district, somewhere between $5,000 and $5,500 per child. So every time you have a child that doesn't show up, well, that's the revenue that the school district loses, okay? All right. So I'm in the meeting with David. We go through the whole process. I agree with everything David said. I was disappointed because when the meeting started, I thought maybe each table would go to a campus, look it all over, come back and give a report. Because I thought that we were going to be involved in the process to determine what each campus needs. Now, in the $150 million bond, Huckabee was the architect that did the presentations for that steering committee. This right here is a spreadsheet. $40 million worth of repairs that the district needed when they presented the $150 million bond last year. It seems that a lot of this information got overlooked this year. They didn't talk about it. Okay, so that's kind of a puzzle. The other thing that Joe kind of alluded to, there's a company called Baselines, and they did a telephone survey last year. And when Superintendent Heath went around and gave his community presentations, he left this one page out of his presentation. I accidentally found it on the website, okay? What it says, and this is their information, and I don't make this stuff up. It says right here, would you vote yes or no in favor of a $90 million bond? At $90 million, there was more yeses than nos. When we got to 125, that's where it stopped. Only 34% said yes, 57% said no. When we got to $150 million, only 29% said yes, and 65% said no. Okay. Cleveland has a history of not listening to consultants, surveys, whatever they're paying for. They don't listen to them, and I don't understand why. Truly, I don't. If you pay the money, you ought to listen to it, whether it's your doctor, lawyer, CPA, whoever it is. Okay. David brought up the fact about what Granbury did. Well, what appears to be missing, Granbury did their improvements for around $70 million. What keeps getting not mentioned for the Cleveland bond is what I call a sports complex. Guys, I love sports just as well as anybody else. I'm sitting there watching the Cowboys like everybody else. But here's my question. When your kiddos are academically in the bottom 10% of the state, the buildings that we currently have need a lot of work. I think we need to prioritize and go in phases of what we're going to do to solve the problem. I've looked at Godly, Joshua, Keene, and Alberta. All four of them have passed $45, $50 million bonds. They take their project in phases. The nice thing about a $40 or $50 million bond, it raises people's property tax a little bit, allows them to adjust their budgets at home to compensate. $130 million, $150, that's a lot in one whack. They talk about the folks that are over 60, they're 65. Well, I'm over 65. But my mom and dad's house is still in Fort Worth. I still rent it. 2 weeks ago, I got a letter in the mail from the Tarrant County Central Appraisal District, and it said the property, they reappraised that house, brick 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. They reappraised it. The property tax went up 56%. How do you handle a 56% increase, y'all? Well, the sad part is the renters are gonna have to take up some of the slack, okay? That's reality, okay? That's reality. Okay. What I'm trying to share with y'all is the fact that when you peel the layers off this thing and really look at a lot of the details, which I do, and I enjoy looking at the details, this bond needs to be done in phases, okay? I think it's a better solution for our community, and I think it's a better way to get a handle on what things cost. These other school districts have got a culture now where they know how to deal with their contractors. In our bond meeting, somebody brought up the fact that, what about a construction manager to help manage the project? Well, unfortunately, every time somebody, not me or David, just other people had good ideas, Michelle's standard reply was, David, that's a great idea. We'll get to you later. They never got to it. They brushed them off. The school board got a list of 6 different ways to manage a project. What I now realize is we have a school board that's not very knowledgeable about how to manage large construction projects. They haven't done any, okay? It's not a bad thing against them. I'm talking reality here, okay? Anyway, my theory, my thoughts are, if each one of us would call 5 people and let them know that this week is early voting, and those 5 could call 5 more, because I believe, if I believe in anything, y'all, I believe in the silent majority. I believe that we ultimately decide what happens in this town. Everybody on the school board's great folks. I don't see much leadership on the board. I don't see a lot of folks that care much about the finances, okay? So the question is, why would I trust the school board with $130 million when the concession stand at wheat, hot dog stand, they spent $300,000 on that, okay? I don't know why they weren't providing oversight. I have no earthly idea. Somebody should have, obviously, okay? So the reality is, it's time for the voters to say no, because last year when the $150 million bond passed, the superintendent called me up. He called me and said, his secretary called me and said, hey, would you meet with Dr. Heaton? I said, I'd be happy to. He and I sat down. He's a nice fella. He's easy to talk to. And we discussed what might be feasible for the school. You know, we just talked, generally speaking. Well, I actually had 2 meetings with him. And what I was trying to communicate with him was what I had heard from people that live here in town, okay? And next thing I know, they call a $130 million bond. Well, that's not what he and I talked about. So, as far as I'm concerned, we have to make our wishes known, but you got to be careful, because Joe Palmer stood up and he got his name plastered all over the newspaper. Pete Wrench got his name plastered all over the newspaper. David Shelton has been in the paper the last 2 Sundays, full-page article criticizing David for his opinion on what happened at the steering committee. My guest column was in the paper Sunday, and they're now starting to hammer on me. Okay, all 4 of us, because we just stood up and voiced our opinion. Well, I got a hot flash for them, and I got a hot flash for y'all. I don't care. I'm entitled to my opinion. Actually, I'll back them up so they can get their opinion. Anyway, thanks y'all. Thank y'all very much for listening to me.
if you can read that, the bottom week of the calendar, that's this week. So you can early vote 8 to 5. All districts, all locations, you can vote anywhere in early voting. City Hall, Cleveland Conference Center right here, and Cleveland High School in the library, 8 to 5. That's this week. And then next week is Monday, Tuesday.
Joe,
Yes.
can I say something and ask a question?
Go ahead.
There were about 7 of us in here right now that were at that meeting that y'all were talking about at the high school. And there was one thing that I was waiting for one of you to say something about it. There was one thing that the superintendent presented before the question and answers started. And I'm asking all of y'all because I can't remember the exact number. Was it 2 million, 1.5? What was the number that is going to be in this bond, that's going to be spent with this bond money to buy cell phones for every student?
Mobile device.
Mobile devices. Okay, I'm not making it up. I have to back up right there. You remember 2.6?
That sounds about right. Yes, sir. It's 2.6 million.
Everybody is going to get a mobile.
Tower.
It's like a tablet.
It's that.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not just the tablet. It's also the integration system for the tablet.
Okay.
So it's not just, hand them out,
They've got to get the system so that
Yes,
they
sir.
can communicate back and
Yes,
forth.
sir, and not just in, it's in the classroom, everything, so the teacher basically would be a swipe read moment.
Okay.
Yeah, really, right, if you really want to know what you think about that, like, it also includes what they call smartboards
Yes, sir.
on that, okay? Smartboards are like blackboards, they move numbers around, grab it. I take that. Smartboards break down a lot. Teachers do not know how to operate smartboards. And I've taught in Venus where they put them in. So I tried to get my table to say, and also the Chromebooks, you can do all kinds of stuff with the Chromebook and project it on the wall. So what they're doing is dumbing down. They're saying, well, we're going to do this and this. And they don't need to do this and this. The truth is you can see many of them that not have smartboards. They're phasing out smartboards and everybody's going to Chromebooks. So I tried to say, let's phase one out. Let's don't do the smartboard. Just do the Chromebook. Like I say, there was no option. That's not an option. We either do it all or you do nothing. So, yeah, I tried to do that. I said, no, do the smartboard. Also, they make the teachers use these things. The more crap you have in the classroom, somebody's going to come around and say, you got this technology. How's that lesson plan? Are you using it or not? So now you got your smartboard, you got your Chromebook, yada, yada, yada. It's excessive. But, they get a lot of traction.
That's the what's the lifespan of these devices? Compared with
The lifespan of one of the devices.
The district said 7 to 10 years. That's what the district said, sir. So, yeah, that's what they said. Generally,
It's 7 to 10 years, and one of the things they're looking at doing in order to keep the technology available for the children that are current is that they're trying to pay off the technology part of the bond first. So that way, that principal is paid for, and then when they get ready to have to move up to a better system, then that is available.
Well, because that is a part of some of these bonds that are passing around the state that are getting such negative scrutiny now, is the taxpayers are catching on to these 30-year notes for laptops and iPads. I was thinking the other day, Dallas, the TV show, went off the air less than 30 years ago. Can you imagine J.R. Ewing or anybody in this room financing that 300-pound car phone that he had? I mean, that's how ridiculous that is. So, like, it's not really something that gets a gold star from me when you don't finance an iPad for 30 years.
They're not.
No, they're not. They're not.
that's
They're not.
the good thing is actually having a plan to get it out of the way first. So it's not, they're not something outdated technology.
That is a good thing.
2 years, 5 years. 5 years. So 5 years.
Mark.
Joe, who is making the progress? Everything is done with the idea
money being made on something.
Well, I would say look at the money that's pushing it right now. An architecture firm would make money, a construction firm would make
That's right.
money. Among others. I mean, there are other firms that make money.
I had asked a question this last meeting, and to Dave, he's up there for one reason. He's selling that thing to everybody there. He's a salesman. That's what that was. And the slips that I asked him, he wrote you a little note about what you wanted, and he answered that and moved on to something else. So there was no input from anybody. One woman had 3 questions she wanted, and she had a tough time. She couldn't get them through. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyhow, somewhere along the line, there was a comment about he got someone's in control. He got somewhere close to $50,000, $60,000 was given to the group to go and do this advertising layout. This is all done professional, had nothing to do with the school. This is all done with the idea of selling the program. And it's for this $130 million.
Well, the intent is to pass the bond, right? The intent was always to pass the bond.
Well-
we know that because last time, the polling reflected
What
that.
I'm after is money. I
Well, sure,
don't
no,
care
yeah.
what the intent is.
Well, but yeah,
Money.
the bond is intended to pass, and then people make money off of it. We're not condemning capitalism or free market or something like that, but,
That,
you know,
he gave me the impression that someone gave them the money to take and do this advertising thing. And I'm from an old advertising firm.
well, there are multiple hacks pushing the bond, and we don't know what they
But this
all
was
are.
without the tax. This was money. Of course, I don't know what he said, that's what they do. Austin gave some money. That was just,
Either the architecture firm or the construction firm is based in Austin, the other is based in Dallas.
One in Austin, one in Dallas, both gave 5,000.
And it should be noted that both outside, there's a bigger.
That was
What's
about that Midland comparison? That seemed like something that's on their side. I mean, they didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
Is there anything been said about this 130 million is going to increase our academics to get us out of this lower 10%?
Okay, I have a handout up there, everybody wants to see it, from the Texas Comptroller, that will, is the best I've ever seen, and the least biased I've ever seen, which will show you that the amount of money spent in the school and academics, there is no correlation whatsoever. It's put up on the state comptroller, not put out on somebody else. It will show you a paper, and it tells, you go first website, will tell you how many 30 schools that they consider geographically similar to Cleveland. Got them in there, and tell you what their academics is, and how much money they spend. I'll tell you both, right there.
That handout, handed out, I don't know where it is. Where is that? Where is it?
I'd like to just touch on something.